creating content changed my life like 100%. I thought that I was just gonna stay where I was in Maldives and I was gonna live there forever, and I was, gonna get a normal job and just stick around. And then when I discovered that I could do this with my phone from anywhere in the world, I was like, wow, I love this. And then on top of that, I discovered that I could also be speaking about something that I totally love, which is music. Um, and I think I would totally encourage people to create content. I could just do it for hours a day. And if I have the time, I'm going to use it to create content because I love it. And I really like it when someone tells me, like, hey, I love what you showed me. And like, I can't stop listening to it. Or maybe thank you so much for talking about my band because now more people are listening to it. For me, that's like so, it's just so great. And it makes me so happy.
I'm Mark, I'm the founder of Right Chord Music, and today we're going to talk about social media, content creation, and I guess like kind of promoting yourself online. Start just by introducing yourself.
I would love to. My name is Agustina. I am originally from Argentina. I am currently living in California, in San Francisco, but I've been traveling for the last 2 years of my life. When I started with, content creation, I realized that I could, make this a living, not only by doing it for myself, but also by doing it for companies that, wanted to create content that people actually were going to stay and look at and interact with. And luckily, you can do that remotely. So for the last 2 years or so, I started traveling. So I kind of move every 3 months to a different place. Right now, I'm in San Francisco and I love it, but I'm gonna go probably to South America soon.
That's a great story. And so Argentina, like, so I don't know much about Argentina apart from football. Do you know though, there's like a really passionate like audience for music in Argentina?
Oh, crazy. I've been to concerts, in most places that I travel, I always try to go to concerts and stuff, and it's different in Argentina. I think that, we are super passionate just as a group of people in the same way that you see that we're so passionate about football. It's the same energy on a concert. So people are going all in. I also think that because of the economical situation of the country, not all the artists tour all the time there. So like maybe they go, every 10 years if they're like big artists, like have the opportunity to go, and you get the opportunity to also pay the ticket, which obviously for Argentinian people, it's hard to pay a ticket. I think they enjoy it 100% and they just go crazy. So yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
it's very fun. Yeah, they say that there's a bunch of musicians that like record their live set in Argentina, like their live concerts, because there's such a crazy crowd.
So when you were growing up, what kind of music were you listening to? And like, is there a strong kind of Argentinian music scene, or is it mainly kind of exported from the US or UK or Europe or
Bunch of great, musicians in Argentina, and there is definitely, a big music scene there. When I was younger, so in the 2000s, there was still a lot of rock. Maybe now there's a bit more Latin beats and reggaeton that is a bit more trending, but there's always been rock music behind. And my parents used to love it, but maybe they would listen to the bigger bands. They were not very into the indie things. So some super famous bands like, Soda Stereo, maybe you heard of them, Sumo, or Spinetta, Calamaro, like the big ones. And we used to like it, but I think my parents always loved British music. So obviously every time we were, on the car and stuff, their CDs were always like, very much from the UK. And I think that that's mostly why I'm so into that music. Um, but yeah, when I was super, super young, it was always that. And then when I got to choose the music, I discovered that I was choosing the same because I really loved it and I really love what they showed me. So yeah, it was most music from outside of my country. Yeah.
and what do you think music means to you? I mean, that's a big question, but like if you had to kind of sum it up.
Yeah, that's a big question. I think music, it means a lot to me. I think that I need music to be able to live and to process most of the emotions. I need music for everything. I need music to be able to go to the gym, to study, to be able to cry. Sometimes I feel like I need music. Um, but I also think it means so much to me because I lost my dad when I was very young, when I was about 8 years old, and I felt like I still was connected with him because I could still listen to his music. And I say we because I'm like me and my mom. I was an only child. So it was just me and her, and like our way of remembering him and feel like we were still together was like playing the same CDs or the USB-C that he like created, or all this, all the music and all the memories are like there. So music definitely means like family to me.
Yeah.
And yeah.
I flick through your TikTok feed, and it's just to me like kind of the best kind of music, right? So I hear Radiohead, I hear The Cure, The Smiths, Talking Heads, Jeff
Yeah.
Buckley in there, Fontaines DC, slightly newer, like all these
Yeah.
incredible bands. And like I always kind of think that the music that really gets me is it kind of like that passionate music, and it feels like I don't know if passion is a word that kind of gets to you with music as well. It's like you don't just listen to music; you listen to music that kind of moves you. Is that
Yes.
fair?
I also think you do notice when, musicians or bands write and there's like so passionate and they really have like something to say. I think that like there's other type of musicians that maybe I get like they just want to create like a poppy song that they will put on the radio and it will maybe go viral, and it can be good, but it's definitely a different feeling. Um, Whereas I don't know, when you hear, maybe Joy Division, you're like, wow, this is
Yeah,
like moving.
it's kind of
So
timeless as well, right? It kind of it's the same emotions that the
yeah,
same emotions from the 60s or 70s or 80s or 90s. It's always going to be there, right? So it's kind of tapped in.
always.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
also I feel like when I have kids, I'm definitely going to introduce them to that music. So I feel like they're gonna get to say like, oh, I like this band. It's like older, like it's so old, like, and I think it's gonna still be there. And obviously there's still some new musicians like Contains DC that you just mentioned that I think that I kind of have a feeling that they're gonna be pretty timeless. They're so new and they've been pretty impactful. Um, so I think they're gonna stay like for a while.
Now you mentioned at the start that you make kind of content for brands as well as yourself. What was kind of, if you remember, like the first time you did that, like did
Yeah.
you know what you were doing, or did you feel like you kind of like were guessing, or like how did that feel like,
Um, yeah, that's a great question actually. So the first, time that I started creating content, it was because I wanted to host a party in Spain because, I lived like 20 years of my life in Buenos Aires in Argentina, and I knew where to go out and listen to the music that I like. There were some parties that were maybe moving around different clubs or a specific club that would play 80s and 90s music. So I knew like yeah, that is the place that we go with my friends maybe once a week. And when I moved to Spain, I was like, I don't know exactly where is that club or that party that I want to go. So I wanted to host one myself. And so everything started when I created an account for that party. So I started creating content like, hey, if I did this and if I played this music, would you come? Where do we do it? And just started kind of conversating with the audience. And it grew pretty quickly. In like a month ago, like 10K followers or so. And I was like, oh, that's good. Like I actually can create content that people will stick around and look at. And then I started slowly, a bit shy, my own, channel, but I wasn't taking it very seriously because I had always this a bit of fear that like people were gonna laugh and like, oh, my friends are gonna look at it and I'm gonna have like 20 views and they're gonna think like, what is she doing? So I started very slowly, very low key. I wouldn't talk on the videos, I wouldn't dance, I wouldn't do anything. Um, but they started growing too. So I was like, hey, maybe I can actually, do this for a living. And because my channel is small yet, I can't live out of it, but maybe I can help other people that want to create engaging content. So my first client was a restaurant in Madrid. That was where I was living it back then. And honestly, in the beginning, it was a bit crazy. I wasn't sure how to manage a client. I wasn't sure, like, how much should I be getting paid for this? How am I using my face? Does that mean they should pay me more? Does that mean it was a bit crazy in the beginning, but I was super grateful that I got that first gig because I was like, I kind of proved myself that I could and that I could do it for myself, but also for someone else. And now, I had the opportunity to work with, super cool brands and startups. And I'm like, so glad that I started and that I took that maybe small, a bit more um, maybe disorganized client in the beginning because it led to a bunch of other opportunities. So yeah. Very happy. Most people don't start is the same reason that was stopping me in the beginning. It's like, what are people gonna think? Like, and usually that feeling, it's kind of crazy because it's the closest people to you that you're worrying about. It's like my friends from university or from work. What are they gonna think? Am I being ridiculous? And then I was like, actually, my real friends are gonna support me. Doesn't matter what I'm gonna do. So I was just like, fuck it, I'll do it. And I think that's what stopped most people. And then I think that another issue is that some people try to speak about something that is not their passion.
Yeah.
I don't think I'll be able to show up and create content every day if it wasn't about something that I truly love, which is music. So, um, if I wasn't, getting any compensation for what I'm doing, I would still do it. So I think that that's like the feeling that you need to have for the topic that you're going to talk about.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of
Yeah.
sense. So we're going to talk about promoting music as well, right? And
Yep.
and I think it's interesting because if you think about the kind of the landscape of being a musician and how you get your music out into the world, in some ways it's easier than ever before, but in many ways it's
Yeah.
harder than ever before, right? Because obviously social media is kind of like leveled the playing field, so everyone could potentially reach that huge audience, but at the same time the competition is like wild, right? And then
It's
you've got
crazy.
all that music being added to Spotify every day. It's like 100,000 tracks a day, all this kind of stuff. So what do you think your role is? So if a band came to you and said, like, Augustina, I want you to help promote my music, like, how do you see that? What do you say to them? What's your kind of role, and what can and can't you do you think?
Okay, yeah. So I do totally agree with what you were saying. Like, it's awesome that everyone gets to create music, content, art, whatever they're doing. It's super cool, but because everyone has the opportunity to do so, there's so much content and so many songs going out, and you're like, maybe as a listener or as a viewer, you're like, oh my god, I don't know who to pay attention to, because you have to sort of pick. And I think that my role, I think, my audience at this point, they know me and they know what I like. And I say I like rock music, but maybe I'm not that into, I don't know, punk, but I'm very into post punk. And I feel like my followers know that. So I think that, I already have an audience that is sort of curated, and we all have a very similar music taste. So when an artist came to me and it's like, hey, I want to promote my song, and can you put it on your playlist? Can you do a video about it? First of all, I check if it's like a song that is going to fit. Maybe it's a great song, but it's not the exact type of vibe that my followers like and that I usually listen to. So if I created a video for them, maybe it's not going to do very well. If it's like, yeah, just a different style, I wouldn't do it. Um, but, I think that what I have that is different is that I just try to curate it a bit more and not just talk about all the music in the world or every style. I think that that sort of curation helps. Um, at least for me and for growing my channel, it's been useful to niche down and
Yeah,
to grab maybe just a section, and then the people that want to promote and that also want to come and find songs know what they're gonna get, and they're like, she I know how she is and I know what she likes, so it's useful for both. Also for my followers, when they're like, I want to listen to something new today, but I also don't want to spend hours looking and testing different things, and maybe Spotify recommendations are not very good these days. So they're like, okay, I know that her playlists have always this type of music that I like. So if she added something new, I'm gonna like it. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, I
yeah.
think it's just like
I guess
adding a layer of curation.
yeah, it's like a trusted familiarity, isn't it? I suppose like people know what to expect, and so they can rely on your taste to be consistent, I guess. And I
Yeah,
think that's consistency is quite an interesting point. So I think um, I've certainly done research into kind of social media content and influencers, and go, what are they doing? What are they doing well that other people aren't? And one of the things that comes across is that consistency, right? You get a
yeah,
format and you repeat the format, don't you? Is that
yeah.
is that fair? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, totally. I definitely, before this music copyright issue on TikTok, I used to do this that I used to do really well, where I was just like ranking my top 10 favorite songs from a band. And that was like what sort of got me to start posting super, because super frequently, because every day I would pick a different band, and I was like, okay, today I'm ranking Radiohead, and today I'm doing The Cure, and whatever. And people like that, and also viewers like that, similar content from the same person, because they get used to it and they like that. So consistency is great, and also, having your own style, or a series where you say like, hey, here are 5 songs that make me feel this way, and then you do 10 videos that are with the same prompt. I think that it's super easy to create because you find your style, and also it's great for the viewer because they get used to what they're going to get when they see you. um, and I think that's great. And also I think that especially the musicians that are doing really well is the ones that are, of course, showing up every day or super constantly, but also, putting effort and showing what's the process behind their music. And they show how to is, be in the studio, if it's alone or with a band, how does it feel? How do they write their songs, or everything? People like seeing the behind the scenes. So I feel like these artists that are getting it right are the ones that are doing that, but also the people that are actually showing their personality. So the ones that are talking, and you get to feel like, oh, this person is my friend, and I feel like I know them. I think people love that, and the musicians and the bands that are doing that are definitely being really successful online.
Yeah. And what about the bands? What are the biggest mistakes you think? So when you're flicking through TikTok or Instagram, so you must be looking at a lot of music content. What's the stuff you go, oh God, don't do that? Flick past that.
Uh-huh. I think that, I usually, every time I see someone trying that is, new, I'm like, okay, at least you're showing up. And that's the first step. I think that to be able to find your style in the beginning, you're gonna, post a bunch of things that maybe you look back and you're like, what was that? Like, I had no idea what I was doing. And that's okay in the beginning. But maybe some of the things that I wouldn't recommend is just, I see a lot of musicians just recording, like, their swimming pool, or their view from their room, and just putting their song behind, hoping that that will go viral, when really that's not very entertaining, and people they don't really know your music, so they're gonna swipe. And also I see some people maybe doing posts that are super like low effort, like, hey, this is my new song, listen to it. Maybe I would say, hey, my song sounds like this and this band, and I was inspired by this musician, and this is what the song means. That is like, that's what people are going to actually stick and look at. But obviously, musicians, especially indie, usually they have a job during the day, and then during the night they're creating music. So also dedicating time for content it's hard. So I do understand why sometimes it's like, okay, at least I want to put something out, and which is good, because I think that in the end, at least someone is going to listen to it, and when you get some practice, you'll find your style, and you'll find what you like, and what are, people are paying attention to the most.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But no, I think you're right. I think you mentioned entertaining, and I think entertainment is, especially with TikTok, right? I think one of the big changes is kind of a shift from like pushing content at people, which is more kind of Facebook and Instagram era, to now this idea of like you're pulling people in, like, good content pulls you in, right? And like if it's not entertaining first, then often you lose the audience before you've even begun, don't you? And I think
Of course.
that's the biggest challenge, isn't it, in a way, for artists? And you're totally right. Those artists who got into this because they could write great songs or could sing, and suddenly being asked to kind of show up and be entertaining on camera, and they're like, this is not really me. Right? Like,
Yeah.
and I think that goes back to your earlier point about having that confidence to just get in front of the camera and try something. Because I guess the other thing as well is you can always delete stuff, right? And I'm sure there's
Yeah.
things you posted where
Of
you're like, that's
course.
not working, I'm going to get rid of that.
Of
Yeah.
course. Of course. And I think that you also, I think that some people have this idea of like an influencer that is like not really what it is now. You can talk about anything these days. So maybe, you are a musician that wants to create content, but you don't want to be, dancing and lip syncing to your own song, because it's like, maybe I'm a guy in his 40s, like, well, I don't feel comfortable with this. And like, you can actually sit down and just talk to the camera. And if what you're saying is interesting, people are going to watch it. I also think that, there's one rule in general to social media these days. As we said, content has to be either entertaining or educational. So, and when I say educational, maybe like showing people a new song that could be maybe educational. You're showing them something new. You can just sit down also and give a list to people to the last 5 songs that you found, and that's great. And I think people want that. But you also need to pay attention to the first second or 2 seconds of your video, because that is the killer. So
No,
if
I
you
was going to
start
ask
by
you.
saying,
Yeah.
yeah, if you start
That was
by
going to be my
saying
next
like,
question. So, in
okay,
terms of those hooks or that kind of that, as you said, that first second or the first thing you see on screen, what
yeah.
are the things you've learned over time, which are the kind of the things that work consistently?
Yeah, so I think that if you start your video by saying, "Hey, my name is Agustina and I'm from Argentina," and today that is too long, and like I already swiped, like no. So if you want to do like a music recommendation thing, just go like, "Hey, here are 5 songs that had me, hooked the last week." Just start with it. Don't give an intro. You can introduce yourself in the middle or in the end of the video, because if you just start by saying something long and maybe not so catchy, people are just going to scroll, unless you're a super known influencer or actor that people are like, oh, whatever he posts, I'm going to look at. I don't care what he's saying, which is not the case for most of us. So I think that, hooks are so important. And usually, what I do is I just start speaking about whatever I'm going to speak. And if it's a video that I'm not using my voice and I'm just showing the song, I usually try to start the text or put a big text saying, if I'm recommending a song, I'm going to say, hey, this song sounds like Oasis, but with this and this. You know, they need to see something that they recognize in the screen first and that they will catch their attention. They're like, oh, Oasis, I love Oasis, I'm going to stay, and it's so fast.
Yeah.
There's no time, there's no second to lose in those first, clips. So it's super
So
important.
here's a test for you then. So if we shared this video online, what's the hook? So I fell into that trap right at the start of this conversation. I did the introduction, and then you're totally right. By the time people have got through that, they're probably like, I don't even know what this is about. So what do you think is the hook for this video? Is it how to
I
do social
think
media, how to win at social media, or like what would you say?
I think I would start. Obviously, depends on who would be posting the TikTok, right? So if I was posting it from my account and my account is about music and it's, I open up quite a bit and I'm like, here's what I like, here's what I hate. I would start with like maybe the most compelling part, like question out of this interview, no context, just you asking the question and me answering right after. And then that is the clip, and then we can do sort of like, hey, in the caption or in the end of the video, if you like this type of question, or if you want to watch the whole interview, you can link them to your podcast, your YouTube channel, your whatever you have. But I think that if you want to promote something these days, you need to start super strong and give the context later. To start by something that's going to catch people, and that's what I would do. So probably I would post the coolest question or maybe an interesting moment, and then maybe we can create a series or a playlist where people can watch the whole thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Um, so I was going to ask you about nostalgia as well, right? So there's a lot of trends in social media,
Uh-huh.
and well, I guess there's two things. There's trends and there's trending kind of content, right? But
Yes.
nostalgia feels like a trend that is kind of always there because people are always kind of happy to remember stuff from the past, which is good, right?
Yeah.
Do you think you are consciously creating content about nostalgia, or is it just happens to be the music you love? Like, is nostalgia a thing you're thinking about when you're making content?
Honestly, no, especially because I wasn't alive in the 80s and in the 90s. But I do think that when someone that was alive back then sees my videos and maybe I look like how someone looked in the 80s when they were going out to a club. So I looked like, the viewer when he was a teenager or when it was younger. And they look at me dancing to an old song, maybe wearing clothes that are similar to the style back then, purely because I like it and that has been my inspiration. I think that people get that feeling of nostalgia, but it wasn't intentional in the beginning. Then obviously I find out based on the feedback and the comments that that was the feeling that I was creating for people. Um, but obviously for me, it's not so nostalgic. I'm still discovering music from the 80s and the 90s. So I don't get the feeling, but I get why people are getting it.
Okay, and um, I mean, right music is all about new music and new music discovery, right? So I'm always kind of fascinated by what you're listening to now, and I know you've got a playlist, but for people who haven't checked out your playlist yet, what are kind of some of the songs that they should be, or some of the bands or some of the artists they should be listening to right now? Have you got like a top three or top five or something of things we should be
Yeah.
listening?
Yeah, I could think about a few. Obviously, I don't have a discovery playlist, so that one I keep it private. I usually like to curate my playlist based on like a feeling or a prompt. Um, but I do have my secret discovery playlist where I put everything there. And I've been listening a lot to a band that is House of Harm. I really like Close Dear, which is an artist that I've been collaborating with last month. And let me think. And probably, yeah, Controvoid. The three of them sound pretty similar, so I'm clearly going through a phase. Um, they're both awesome. I'm really, really into this song from Controvoid that is called Losing Aim. So, I would totally recommend it. It feels very 80s, but it's from this year. So I love when that happens, and I love that we can, still produce that type of music. If I wouldn't tell you, maybe you would think that it's, from that era. And the three of those bands sound pretty similar. So if you like one, you probably like the three of them. So maybe that's what I would recommend for now. That's what I've been into.
Perfect. And how do you discover music? Is it people sending music to you? Is it just searching on Spotify? Like where do you get your new music from?
Yeah, so usually I discover a lot of music on TikTok. So it's purely by scrolling, TikTok knows that I like music at this point, so it shows me music content. Same on Instagram. Also, I try to, when I make friends with someone, the first thing I would ask is like, what music do you like? So, we would connect. Maybe like my friend would give me their Spotify, and if I find a playlist that I find cool, I'll save it, and then I'll take a listen to their discovery playlist or whatever playlist that they have. And usually, I love finding, music that way because it also reminds me to the person that I just met, and I feel like I get to know them better. Um, and then, yeah, of course, I do get a lot of DMs of people that are followers that are sending me music that they either create or that they really like. And maybe it's not that um, mainstream. And they're like, hey, you probably don't know this one. It's from an old band or it's from a new band. You should check it out. And that's how also I discover a lot.
Amazing. And what would be and we've spoken about fit, so the right kind of music for your channel and your audience, but what would be the best and worst thing an artist could do when approaching you? So if they were, dropping into your DMs and sending you a message, what would get you opening that message and what would get you deleting that message?
Hmm, that's a good question. Um, I think that some I got some maybe like rude DMs, like, maybe saying something about how I look, or so that immediately no. I would not open it. It doesn't matter how many songs you're gonna send or want to collaborate. If you're like not being like respectful, immediately no. Um, Also, I usually when they're just being nice, I open it. Because I try to not judge the song by whatever how the artist is writing. Maybe their first language is not English or Spanish, and I got messaged by Italian bands that they're so usually I do open everything. Um, Maybe the ones that I am not as excited about is when it's an agency. So agencies that are, or yeah, just promoting a bunch of artists and they are not curating the type of artists that they are helping, and it's just like they're all different. I'm like, I'm not that interested. I love working directly with the musician, but honestly, I try to open everything and I give everything a chance, especially if they're like, this is my own creation, because I know how much that means, and how much time and money they're probably spending on creating that song. I always give it a go.
Yeah. And in terms of the kind of promotion you have done for artists, I know you've had some kind of success stories. Can you sort of talk us through like what's happened in response to making that content with those artists?
Yeah. So, honestly, the post that I been recommending artists that are doing really well are the ones where I tell people the similarities with other artists, honestly. Like as I told you, so if the band sounds similar to the Smiths, I'm like, hey, I found a band that sounds just like the Smiths, but if they were, born in 2024, and people love that because they're, when you like music that is from the 80s and 90s and old in general, and you find something new, because sometimes you feel like, oh, I listened to all the music from back then. I really want something new. So when people detect that, I think that usually they stay and they love it. And that has been what worked the best for me. So usually the collaborations where I do that sort of hook and show them like name a few bands that may be older and big, and then name the new band. That's when it does really well.
Fashion seems to play quite a big role in your content as well, right? Like you clearly have a style in terms of the way you show up on camera. Often there's kind of dresses and there's music, and the two kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah.
Is that like feels a very natural kind of extension of you, right?
Yes, that obviously wasn't planned, but honestly, the main reason why I'm always wearing dresses is because what I told you about the fact that I'm traveling so much, and it wasn't intentional. I used to have pants and, other types of clothes, but every time I've moved to a new country, I would like, go shopping or maybe go thrifting. I do thrifting a lot, and I would buy, maybe 5 new clothes in those 3 months. And then when it was time to make my bags again, because I'm moving to a new country, I was like, oh, fuck, I'm overweight. Like the bag is too heavy. So I was like, okay, I have to get rid of something. So I clearly didn't notice that I was getting rid of all my pants slowly. And then I only had dresses. And I was like, okay, well, I'm just wearing dresses now. So that wasn't intentional. But also, I know I find that it's like really easy. I just pick one for the day, and there's not a lot to think about. Just put a dress on
Yeah.
and go. So that's the main reason.
Again, it's very distinctive as clearly your content. So I think that is clearly work in some way.
Yeah.
And I guess I was going to ask you about the volume of content you make as well. So like if you read online about, good social media practice, often it's kind of slightly overwhelming. They talk about, making loads of content
Okay.
every day. Like what
Yeah.
how much do you post? Like give me a kind of sense of how much you're posting in a day or a week or
I post a lot, but honestly, I post a lot because it's like a hobby to me. Like I don't look at creating content as a job, especially when it's for my own TikTok. Obviously, when I'm doing it for like a brand, it's my job, and of course, I clock my hours. But when it's for me, I could just do it for hours a day, and if I have the time, I'm going to use it to create content because I love it, and I really like it when someone tells me like, "Hey, I love what you showed me," and like I can't stop listening to it, or and so honestly, I do post almost every day and like maybe 3 times a day. And that I just want to make sure that everyone understands that that is not necessary. You can be posting a lot less and still be successful. I just post a lot because I feel like I have a lot of ideas and I love sharing it. And there's so many songs and so many bands that we could talk about. So music is just endless and there's a lot of content to create. So for me, it's been like that. 'Cause it's just my free time, honestly. So I
yeah.
post a lot.
And I guess another question I've always curious about is kind of the setup, right? So
Yeah.
kind of the essential kit for you as a content creator.
Yeah. So my setup is just a ring light and that, comes with a tripod. So you get the tripod and some good light. I think that having good lighting for your videos is super important because I never find myself looking at something that is sort of blurry and dark because it's just not very enjoyable. So I would scroll that. So I would say that, if you are going to start making content, just get a ring light with a tripod. And they're not expensive. They're like $20 on Amazon. And I take that everywhere. And, my background changes all the time because I move so much. So I don't really care that much about what's happening behind. I just really care that, people are able to see my face clearly. And I don't have a microphone because I found that my iPhone is enough. So honestly, you don't need a lot. It's not very fancy. Just, a ring light and your voice and your phone. That's it.
That's cool. And when
Yeah.
do you and editing? So how do you edit? Is it CapCut or do you use something
Yeah.
else? Yeah.
CapCut, honestly. If it's like honestly, sometimes my videos are so short and so maybe like a text on the screen, so I just do it on TikTok. But if it's a maybe a bit of a longer video, yeah, CapCut. CapCut is the best. It's
Yeah.
so good.
Right. So how important do you think hashtags are in content creation now? As
Not as much
important?
anymore.
Much? No, no.
No. So basically, what I've heard and what I look at people that are successful doing right now is use the hashtags that are actually relevant. So if you're talking about, your band, maybe just use 3 or 4 hashtags that have to do with exactly what you're talking about on the video. If you're posting on TikTok, the text on the screen is a lot more helpful these days than what you are putting as your hashtag and your caption. So usually 3 to 4, that's enough. But it's not a deal breaker. Honestly, I got videos going viral with no hashtags, so it's not a deal breaker at all.
What about sort of trending music? Obviously, you're very creative in your music and you're kind of choosing the music. But do you ever look at that music which is kind of the viral hit on TikTok and think, well, if it fits within your style, could
Yeah.
that also play a role as well? So for other people posting content, if I was posting content or a band was posting content, obviously they could be using their own music, but if they weren't, could they get a lot of attention by using kind of trending music? Do you think that's the thing that works?
Yes, totally. I think that, Instagram and TikTok definitely prioritize content that are, when people are using viral sounds. I try to use the ones that fit my style. So, for example, now, when in Rome, The Promise, that song, I don't know if you heard that one. It's a great song. It's super trending on TikTok. And I think it's great because I get to use it. And a lot of people that don't know me get to discover me. And they're like, hey, on my channel, you'll find a bunch of other songs that sound similar to this one. So they I think it's also great because people that are younger are listening to these maybe old songs and they're like maybe getting into this new music for them, super old actually.
Yeah.
But I think it's great, and yeah, I try to utilize it when it fits my vibe, and I think it's great when it happens, honestly, because it makes creating content a lot easier. Much, I think that in my channel, something that happens that is super interesting is I'm on my early 20s, so I find that a lot of people that are my age are still discovering a bunch of bands from of the 80s and the 90s, and a bunch of people that are now in like their 40s or 50s are discovering these new musicians that I'm showing that sound like that. So you get those kind of crossover from people that are younger discovering older music and people that are older discovering younger music on the same channel, and all the music sounds similar still. So I think that's cool, and that works really well.
Yeah, I'm going to ask you a hardest question now, I think
Go
probably,
on.
which is if you had to leave home tomorrow with only 3 songs on your iPhone,
Three
or
songs?
yeah, 3. I'm only giving you
Oh
3,
my God.
or maybe you can have
That's
5. You
great.
can have 5 if you
Oh
want.
no, I always get like the 3 albums on the island, and
Okay,
I have that answer ready. So
okay,
I'm gonna.
okay. Do 3 albums then. 3 albums. That's fine. Do 3 albums.
Okay. 3 albums is more fair. Three
Yeah,
songs is crazy. Um. Okay, so I would take The Queen is Dead.
yeah.
I would take The Stone Roses,
Nice.
and I would take okay, Melancholy and The Infinite Sadness, Smashing Pumpkins,
Oh yeah.
and those are my 3 albums. But
Okay.
if I had to pick 3 songs,
Yeah, that's hard.
I that's harder, and I think one of them would be Dancing with Myself for sure.
Okay.
I have that one tattooed. I'm gonna say that one's very happy, so that one's for when I'm in a good mood. I'm gonna say Love Song by The Cure when I'm feeling more romantic, and the third one maybe I would have to think about that one.
Yeah.
Maybe I
It's
Wanna Be
mood
Adored.
based, isn't it? Don't you think? It's kind of same mood, but like depending on your mood, you'd have like 3 for
Yeah,
that and 3 for that. Yeah. No, it
yeah.
was a hard question.
It's alright. What are yours?
uh I would say maybe Weird Fishes by Radiohead.
Oh, good song.
Maybe that's one. The Rat by the Walkmen. Do you know that song?
No,
Oh, you'll love that song, I think.
I should
Yeah,
try it.
yeah. It's just like a really like pounding, driving, like ball of energy. Yeah. And there's
Okay,
an
cool, cool.
amazing cover by I've forgotten his name, which is bad. Like an independent artist who Adam somebody or other, and he's like a completely reinvention of a song, and I actually love both. I'll send
I
it to
love
you.
when that happens.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, I would love that.
That's two. Oh, third. Um, maybe something like Lover Should Have Come Over by Jeff Buckley, or maybe Nick Drake at the Chime of a City Clock.
I love Nick Drake.
Yeah, but that's
Nice.
I've done four already, so that's too bad, right? Which content creators do you look to, or take inspiration from? Like, who are you
Yeah,
watching and going, they're really good?
that's great. Okay, so music wise, is the music curators are really like Fuegostein or Fuegostein. I don't know how you say that one. He's super big, and he also makes talks about music and makes playlists. And then there's Matthew Mayer, which does something super similar, um, similar to what I'm doing also. And yeah, I feel they don't not many names come to my mind right now, but I also consume a bunch of content in like fashion and stuff, but I don't have like my favorite. I would say in terms of music, I do follow them quite a bit, and I get some new songs out of their channel, so they're great. Yeah.
Perfect.